Pay attention to the two young girls in this bedroom footage. On the top bunk is Demaria Hollingsworth, peacefully sleeping during what should be a fun summer visit to her grandmother's house in Tennessee. On the bottom bunk is her 13-year-old cousin, wide awake. Just hours earlier, Demaria had been arguing with her cousin over an iPhone, and now that cousin is approaching the top bunk with bedding in her hands, ready to commit an unthinkable act. Moments later, the 13-year-old places her full body weight on the bedding, covering Demaria's face as she sleeps. The suffocation lasts for minutes. Then, the camera captures something even more chilling. The girl calmly cleaning up her cousin's body and repositioning it to hide what she's done. But what the 13-year-old doesn't know is that a camera has been recording everything. In July 2024, a grandmother's house in Humboldt, Tennessee became the scene of one of the most chilling juvenile crimes in American history. And it was all captured on camera. 12-year-old girl, whose name remains protected due to her age, had traveled from out of town to stay with her grandmother for the summer. Her 8-year-old cousin, Demaria Hollingsworth, was there too. It should have been an innocent summer vacation filled with swimming, bike rides, and playing with neighborhood kids. Demaria's mother, Rayana Smith, remembered her daughter as always smiling, excelling in school, and hugging her little sister every chance she got. But tension was brewing. The girls had been arguing over an iPhone. What started as a typical childhood dispute was about to escalate into something unthinkable. What the 12-year-old had no way of knowing was that her grandmother had installed home security cameras throughout the house, including one in the bedroom where the cousins shared bunk beds. On the night of July 15th, that camera captured everything. The surveillance video showed Demaria sleeping peacefully in the top bunk, then the 12-year-old approaching with bedding in her hands. The footage revealed the older girl placing her full body weight on the bedding, covering Demaria's face as she slept. For minutes, that felt like hours to those who would later watch. The video captured the suffocation. The 8-year-old never had a chance to defend herself. After Demaria died, the camera kept recording. The 12-year-old didn't panic or call for help. Instead, the footage showed her methodically cleaning up her cousin and repositioning the body. The calculated nature of these actions shocked everyone who saw the video. When Demaria was found unresponsive in her bed the next morning, there was initially no indication of foul play. Not until 2 days later when a tipster came forward, telling police to check the bedroom camera footage. District Attorney Frederick Adja later described what investigators saw.
The video shows the 13-year-old with her full body weight taking bedding. It appears the 8-year-old is asleep, and she takes the bedding and covers the 8-year-old's face.
Adji called it one of the most disturbing violent acts committed by either an adult or juvenile that my office has prosecuted. No words can describe it. It's unimaginable. The 12-year-old, who turned 13 shortly after the incident, was charged with first-degree murder and tampering with evidence. Prosecutors petitioned to have her tried as an adult. Under Tennessee law, juvenile court loses jurisdiction when a defendant turns 19, meaning without adult prosecution, she could be released at 19 with no further supervision or treatment. For Demaria's mother, the grief was compounded by guilt.
When they told me about that argument,
I should have just gone to get my kid, Rayana Smith told reporters through tears.
But they were having fun for the summer, and I didn't think she would kill my baby.
Smith's last memory of her daughter was Demaria smiling, giving her kisses, saying she'd see her mom when it was time to come home. She never coming back home, Smith repeated, the reality crushing. The case raises haunting questions. How does a 12-year-old decide to kill their cousin over a phone? What goes through a child's mind as they watch another child die? And most chillingly, would anyone have ever known the truth without that camera? That home security system installed by a grandmother who simply wanted to keep her house safe became the only witness to murder. Without it, Demaria's death might have remained a mystery. The 12-year-old would have gone home at summer's end, carrying her secret forever. But cameras don't lie. The Tennessee case demonstrates something terrifying about modern surveillance. Cameras aren't just in public spaces anymore. They're in our homes, in our bedrooms, in the most private spaces we occupy, installed by family members who never imagine those cameras will capture anything more serious than a potential break-in. For the 12-year-old girl in Humboldt, this her crime was documented with cinematic clarity. Every movement is preserved, every action time-stamped. District Attorney Aji emphasized the premeditated nature revealed by the footage. This wasn't a moment of passion or an accident. The video showed deliberation, the girl using her full body weight to ensure her cousin couldn't breathe, maintaining the pressure long enough to guarantee death. Then came the cover-up. The footage revealed the 12-year-old cleaning Demaria's body, moving her into a position that would appear natural, attempting to stage the scene. These weren't panicked actions of a child who'd made a terrible mistake. They were calculated attempts to get away with murder. When investigators reviewed the footage, they watched something almost incomprehensible. The girl looked like any other preteen. Nothing in her appearance suggested she was capable of such violence. That disconnect between how young she looked and what the video showed her doing made it even more disturbing. The legal implications extended beyond the charges. Prosecutors faced the difficult question of whether a 12-year-old could truly understand the permanence of taking a life. The human brain's prefrontal cortex, responsible for impulse control and understanding consequences, doesn't fully develop until around age 25. But the video footage complicated any argument about not understanding her actions. The cover-up suggested awareness that what she'd done was wrong. The cleaning, the repositioning, the apparent attempt to stage a natural death all indicated knowledge that she'd committed a crime and wanted to hide it. The petition to try her as an adult reflected this tension. She was barely a teenager, her brain still developing, potentially unable to fully grasp what she'd done. Yet the video showed actions that appeared deliberate and aware. For Demaria's family, the footage provided answers, but couldn't ease the pain. They knew how she died, murdered by her own cousin while sleeping. But that knowledge brought its own torture. Rayana Smith's statement about not retrieving her daughter after the argument haunted her. How could she have known that a childhood dispute over a phone would end in murder? The community of Humboldt struggled to process what had happened. This wasn't gang violence or drug-related crime. It was two children from the same family, staying at their grandmother's house for summer vacation. The case sparked discussions about troubling trends. First, the increasing violence among very young children. While overall juvenile crime rates have decreased in recent decades, incidents of extreme violence committed by children 12 and under remain persistent. Second, the role of technology and social media in children's lives. Investigators would explore whether online content the 12-year-old had been exposed to contributed to her mental state. Third, the proliferation of home surveillance and its implications for privacy and family trust. The footage from that bedroom camera would be sealed from public view. Both girls were minors, and the content was too disturbing to release. But everyone who saw it described being fundamentally changed. Watching a child methodically kill another child created trauma for investigators, prosecutors, and court personnel. For the 12-year-old perpetrator, the footage meant there could be no defense based on reasonable doubt. She couldn't claim it was an accident, couldn't suggest someone else was responsible, couldn't argue about what really happened. The camera had recorded everything. As the case moved through the legal system, it became a touchstone for debates about juvenile justice, how society should handle child killers, whether cameras in homes create safety or invasion of privacy, and whether very young offenders can be rehabilitated. But underlying all these debates was a simpler truth. An 8-year-old girl was dead, murdered by her own cousin, and the only reason anyone knew what really happened was because a camera had been watching. The bedroom that should have been a safe haven became a crime scene. The summer vacation that should have been filled with happy memories ended in death. The family gathering that should have brought relatives together tore them apart forever. Demaria Hollingsworth's life was cut short at 8 years old. She would never finish elementary school, never become a teenager, never experience the milestones her mother had dreamed of for her. For the 12-year-old perpetrator, life as she knew it ended that night too. Whether tried as a juvenile or adult, whether sentenced to years in detention or decades in prison, her childhood was over. The consequences of those minutes captured on camera would follow her forever. And for everyone who heard about this case, there was a chilling realization. Evil doesn't always look like we expect. Sometimes it looks like a child. Sometimes it happens in a grandmother's house. So, me times it's caught on camera, revealing secrets we never imagined existed. The 12-year-old had no idea CCTV was exposing her evil secret. She had no idea every action was being preserved as evidence. She thought she could get away with it. She was wrong.
The collective memory of a nation has gone back to that February day 17 years ago. The horrifying freeze frame when 2-year-old James Bulger was lured to his death. A murder made so sickening because the killers were children themselves.
February 12th, 1993. A busy shopping day at the New Strand Shopping Centre in Bootle, Liverpool. Dozens of families moving through stores, children laughing, the ordinary chaos of weekend retail. Among the shoppers, James Bulger and her son, James. In one momentary lapse, the kind every parent has experienced, Denise looked away, just seconds. When she turned back, James was gone. What Denise didn't know was that her son hadn't simply wandered off. Two 10-year-old boys, John Venables and Robert Thompson, had been watching, waiting, selecting their target, and the cameras caught it all. The CCTV footage from that day would become one of the most haunting images in criminal history. Grainy, black and white, time-stamped, it showed two young boys leading a toddler by the hand through the shopping center. To anyone watching at the time, it looked innocent. Passers-by assumed the older boys were James's brothers. Nobody intervened, but investigators reviewing that footage knew they were watching an abduction. The cameras revealed Venables and Thompson had spent the entire day truanting from school. Security footage showed them casually observing children, appearing to select targets. They'd attempted to abduct another boy earlier, but were interrupted by his mother. Throughout the afternoon, cameras captured them shoplifting, sweets, batteries, a troll doll, and a can of blue Humbrol modeling paint. The same paint later found on James's body. The boys led James on a 2.5-mile walk through Liverpool. Over 30 people saw them during this journey. Several noticed James appeared distressed, had injuries, and was crying. Multiple witnesses challenged the boys. Venables and Thompson had their story ready. "He's our little brother." Everyone accepted the explanation. The walk ended at a railway embankment near a disused station. What happened next was almost incomprehensible in its brutality. The boys threw paint in James's eyes, kicked him, stamped on him, threw bricks and stones, and shoved batteries into his mouth. Finally, they struck him with a 22-pound iron railway fish plate, causing 10 skull fractures. The pathologist counted 42 separate injuries, so many that investigators couldn't determine which blow was fatal. In a final horrific act, Venables and Thompson laid James's body across railway tracks, hoping to make it look like an accident. When James was reported missing, investigators immediately turned to the shopping center's surveillance system, but the footage quality was poor, grainy, low resolution, typical of early 1990s CCTV. Police needed enhancement to identify the suspects. The Ministry of Defense stepped in, using military technology to improve the footage. The enhanced images were released to the public via BBC's Crime Watch and newspaper front pages. The appeal went nationwide. The breakthrough came from an anonymous phone call. Someone recognized Venables, knew he'd been truanting with Thompson on February 12th, and had seen blue paint on Venables' jacket. When police visited the boys' homes, they found blood on Thompson's shoes, matching James's DNA, and blue paint on Venables' jacket, matching that found on James's body. During separate police interviews, both boys initially denied involvement. Eventually, each turned on the other, and the confessions emerged. On November 24, 1993, at age 11, John Venables and Robert Thompson were found guilty of murder, becoming the youngest convicted murderers of the 20th century. The judge, Mr. Justice Moreland, told them they had committed a crime of unparalleled evil and barbarity, with conduct that was both cunning and very wicked. In an unprecedented move, the judge lifted reporting restrictions and allowed the boys' names to be released publicly, stating, "The public interest overrode the interest of the defendants." The case fundamentally changed Britain. At the time of James Bulger's abduction, there were just 10 CCTV systems active in the country. By 2005, 4 million cameras were installed, more than any other nation in Europe. The grainy footage of James being led away became the catalyst for the most extensive surveillance network in the world. The case also transformed how Britain handled juvenile offenders and sparked debates about the age of criminal responsibility. But perhaps the most lasting impact was psychological. That image of a toddler being led away by children who appeared protective, when in reality, they were leading him to his death. It shattered assumptions about childhood innocence and proved that cameras could capture truths too horrifying to imagine. Without CCTV, those 2 boys might never have been identified. The crime might have remained unsolved. B. The cameras recorded every step of that fatal journey. The James Bulger case represented a turning point in British law enforcement and in how society understood the relationship between surveillance, crime, and justice. The grainy footage that led to Venables and Thompson's capture demonstrated something both powerful and troubling. Cameras could solve the unsolvable, but they also revealed horrors we'd rather not see. The investigation following James's disappearance was one of the most intensive in British history. Police knew a child had been taken from a shopping center in broad daylight. The CCTV footage gave them their first real lead, but it presented unique challenges. In 1993, surveillance camera technology was primitive. The footage was grainy, black and white, often difficult to interpret. The image of James being led away showed what was happening, but wasn't clear enough to immediately identify the perpetrators. The Ministry of Defense's enhancement was crucial. Without military-grade image processing, Venables and Thompson's faces might have remained indistinguishable. When the enhanced images were released to the public, the response was overwhelming. The British media plastered the footage across front pages and news broadcasts. The image of a tiny toddler holding an older child's hand, unaware he was being led to his death, struck a chord unlike anything before. Tips flooded into the police. Each piece of information had to be carefully verified, each lead investigated. The pressure to solve the case was immense. The public was watching, demanding answers. The anonymous phone call that finally broke the case came from someone who knew both boys. The caller noted that Venables and Thompson had been absent from school on the day James was taken and had noticed the blue paint on Venables' jacket, the same distinctive paint visible in CCTV footage and found on James's body. When police arrived at the boys' homes, they were confronted with a reality that challenged everything they understood about criminal behavior. These weren't hardened criminals or older teenagers. They were 10 years old, children themselves. The evidence, however, was irrefutable. Blood on Thompson's shoes matched James's DNA. The blue paint on Venables' jacket matched the paint thrown in James's eyes. Witnesses placed both boys at the shopping center at the relevant times, and most damningly, the CCTV footage showed them leading James away. In the interview rooms, both boys initially maintained their innocence. They'd been at the shopping center, yes, but they hadn't taken any child. They didn't know James Bulger. But as the interviews continued, cracks appeared in their stories. Details didn't match. Timelines shifted. Eventually, each boy began blaming the other. Venables said Thompson was the leader. Thompson claimed Venables was more violent. The truth was that both boys were fully culpable. The CCTV footage and witness statements showed them working together, making decisions together, jointly carrying out the abduction and murder. Neither was an unwilling participant. The trial of John Venables and Robert Thompson became a media circus. The fact that the defendants were children, had been 10 when they committed murder, were 11 by trial, created unprecedented legal and ethical challenges. How do you prosecute children for murder? How do you sentence them? How do you balance justice for James with recognition that the perpetrators were themselves children? The judge's decision to lift reporting restrictions and allow the boys to be named was controversial. Typically, juvenile defendants' identities are protected. But Justice Moreland argued that the severity of the crime and public interest overrode normal protections. The verdict, guilty of murder for both boys, was met with both relief and anguish. Relief that justice had been served. Anguish that such young children were capable of such violence. The sentences reflected this tension. Both boys were ordered detained at Her Majesty's pleasure. Essentially, an indefinite sentence that could be reviewed as they aged. The judge recommended a minimum term of 8 years. For Denise Bulger, James's mother, the trial provided some answers but little comfort. She learned the details of what had happened to her son, details so horrific that she chose not to attend portions of the trial. She saw the CCTV footage of James's final moments of safety. She heard about his injuries, his suffering. The question that haunted her, that haunted the entire nation, was why? Why had two 10-year-old boys decided to take a toddler and kill him? What could possibly motivate such violence in children so young? Psychologists and criminologists offered various theories. Both boys came from troubled backgrounds, dysfunctional families, exposure to violence, limited supervision. They'd been truanting from school regularly. Some experts suggested they were influenced by violent media. But none of the explanations felt adequate. Plenty of children face difficult circumstances without becoming murderers. The specific combination of factors that led to James Bulger's death remained frustratingly opaque. What wasn't opaque was the role of CCTV in solving the case. Without those cameras, investigators would have had almost nothing. Witness descriptions were vague and contradictory. Physical evidence from the crime scene was limited. The CCTV footage provided the crucial link, visual proof that these specific boys had taken James Bulger. The public response drove a massive expansion of surveillance infrastructure across Britain. If cameras could catch child killers, the logic went, then more cameras meant more safety. Within a decade, Britain went from one of the least surveilled nations in Europe to the most surveilled democracy on Earth. The New Strand shopping center became synonymous with the case. The specific frame of CCTV footage showing James being led away became an iconic and horrifying image. For years afterward, parents across Britain would point to that image as evidence of why they needed to watch their children more carefully. The case also changed how British society viewed children. Before James Bulger's murder, there was a general assumption that children, especially children as young as 10, were inherently innocent, incapable of truly evil acts. The murder shattered that assumption. If two 10-year-olds could torture and kill a toddler, then childhood innocence was not guaranteed. This shift had profound implications for youth justice policy. In the years following the trial, Britain adopted increasingly punitive approaches to juvenile crime. The age of criminal responsibility remained at 10, one of the lowest in Europe, partly because of the Bulger case. How could you argue that 10-year-olds shouldn't be held criminally responsible when two had committed such a calculated murder? The debate continues decades later. Some argue that Venables and Thompson should have been treated as children in need of rehabilitation. Others insist that the severity of their crime warranted adult treatment. What's undeniable is that CCTV played the decisive role in solving the case. That grainy footage, enhanced by military technology and broadcast to millions, turned an impossible investigation into a successful prosecution. The cameras saw what no human witness could have: the exact moment James was taken, the precise route his killers took, the time-stamped evidence of their movements throughout the day. John Venables and Robert Thompson had no idea that CCTV was recording their crime. They were 10 years old in 1993. Too young to fully understand surveillance technology, too focused on their immediate actions to notice the cameras in the shopping center. They thought they could take a child in a crowded public space and no one would know who they were. They were wrong. The cameras caught everything, and that footage would not only solve the case but would haunt Britain's collective consciousness for generations. The image of James Bulger being led away by his killers remains one of the most disturbing pieces of evidence in British criminal history. Not because of what it shows explicitly, a child holding another child's hand, but because of what it represents: innocence betrayed, trust exploited, evil hiding behind the faces of children. Without those cameras, James's murder might have remained unsolved. Venables and Thompson might have continued their lives, carrying their secret forever. But the cameras recorded every step of that fatal journey.